Ladies and gentlemen, hey, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. The rifle meta within Warzone right now just got a little bit more competitive. The Season 2 Reloaded update did actually make some interesting changes to a handful of rifles. And so with that today, I wanted to break down the new top 5 best assault rifle loadouts you want to be using right now. And we're starting first here on true game data because there are a lot of things you might want to look at when it comes to actually deciphering the top 5 and then going through and ordering them one by one. So as always, shout out to Tony, the man, the myth, the legend, for getting us all this information and making it so readily available here. And we got a bunch of different solid rifles. BP50's been good. I wanted to look at the DG and the FR because I feel like they've sort of been quiet good in the background. The Holger ended up getting buffed. The MCW got buffed, and I've seen a lot of questions about that. The MTZ's feeling all right. The RAM, the SVA, and then even the Geist was in our last top 5 because it was actually holding its own. And when we go through and we look at 300 health, so max health, max armor there, and then combination shot TTK, which is ultra important, we get a pretty interesting story here. So first thing I do initially see that to me stands out a little bit more is just that the DG and the FR aren't necessarily all that competitive still. They're decent for sure and they're solid for burst guns, but you can see they're close to mid-range. TTK is not all that crazy. Over range it's all right, but they're not really standing out with our orange or our blue lines. So we can probably go through and hide those and knock those off the list. Now, seen a lot of talk about the MCW. As mentioned, it got buffed, it's got to be good now. Just because a gun gets buffed doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the new #1 meta. I've seen a lot of clickbait and a lot of over exaggeration of how good it is. It's super low recoil and easy to use, but that's not going to change the fact that outside of really 26 meters, which is not the prime area to be using a lot of these guns, its TTK's not all that competitive. And I mean, especially over longer ranges, being this far behind everything else past 48 is just making it non-existent in the real meta here, right? You can use it, it'll be decent, it'll be somewhat competitive, but it's definitely not a top tier option, at least in my own opinion. Also, it seems like right now the Geist is starting to fall off a little bit, which is unfortunate. You know, some buffs that we got here, then also the fact that it's going to be stuck with MW2 attachments for the most part is a little bit underwhelming. And that leaves us with 5. The BP50, our red line, which has a super competitive TTK throughout and is actually the fastest killing beyond 48 meters. The Holger 556, which was buffed, its green line is feeling very good all throughout. The MTZ, our white line, again super consistent throughout. The RAM, crazy good up through 43 meters, then it's still even decent over range, I guess. Then the SVA, super low recoil, super easy to use overall ranges as well. So now that said, let's go through and let's break down these setups for these top 5 guns and actually go through and order them. So as we go through all the loadouts here today, if you are new to the channel or you simply have not subscribed yet, every single day I got you covered with news, updates, patch notes, meta breakdowns. It's all right here right as it happens, so feel free to hit that subscribe button to always stay up to date. And if you enjoyed this video or if you find it helpful at all, do me a favor and drop a like on it. It's always really appreciated. So at number 5, I've got the MTZ 556. It's got a faster fire rate and its control over the longer range is going to be a little bit iffy, I would say, for some players. But as we saw, it's you know, early mid-range and longer mid-range TTKs up through about the 40-50-ish meter mark. Super competitive with the remainder of the class here. It's just one that I do feel like struggles a little bit the further you get out just because of its range and consistency there with the DPM. But initially here, going for the glassless optic, this works so well for pretty much every single range. Honestly, you could use this on subs, for mid-range sniper support, even for some early long range. It's going to help out that firing aim stability, and the ADS con is just not really a big deal, so that's pretty clutch there. We'll be using a lot of that today. The 50 round drum is the max here. Again, a decently fast fire rate though, so you do kind of burn through ammo. Bruin heavy support, the firing aim stability and the idle sway is super clutch here, making the pattern more predictable, on top of the general horizontal control benefits as well. I go for the drifter heavy long barrel, helps out a lot with range, so that you know, effective damage range area is even better now. We got better velocity on here and better control as well. The general velocity though, 745 max here, is a little bit rough for a long range gun, so that's why even more this really sticks in the mid range the best in my opinion, or the early long range I would say. Lastly, I do go for Cassis Break just for ease of use, again making the weapon super predictable. If you wanted to stack a little bit more velocity on here, you could go for something like the Spirit Fire Suppressor. That'd be a solid alternative too. But yeah, the MTZ 556, I feel like maybe a little bit slept on up until this point, but it can actually hold its own. Now at number 4, I've got the SVA 545. It's just extremely reliable here. If you want to use use the hyper burst mode and just go for like the single fire, even though it's really a dual fire there, that's incredibly efficient. It has like no recoil. You can fry, and it's going to be super good really at any range if you can just keep your trigger finger consistent. Full auto, it's also incredibly predictable and has, like we saw on the graph and like we broke down, just a super consistent TTK there too. So regardless of how or where you're using this thing, it's going to be reliable for sure. And quite frankly, I feel like you can get away with using the same setup for hyper burst and full auto at this point. Spirit fire suppressor, it's easy enough that you don't need mega control benefits here, so they're just going for the basic control, range, velocity, little 3-in-1 there. Precision heavy barrel is range, velocity, control, and some added idle sway as well, so making the gun easier to use. Even in hyper burst lately, I've been using Bruin heavy support just because with the firing aim stability and the idle sway benefits, it's going to make it really reliable and consistent with the recentering there. Things like Ripper 56 would be viable here as well. Those other underbarrel attachments that focus on stability and whatnot will be very clutch for that specifically. Then in full auto, of course, it's helping out with the control on top of that. 60 round Cinemag, plenty of ammo for any fight. Then we got the 2.5 times Eagle Eye optic, very consistent and reliable for the mid to long range. So pretty standard rifle setup here, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Hey everyone, real quick, want to give a shout out to my friends over at Control Freak. I've been using Control Freaks for what feels like forever, honestly, and really I feel like I can't play without them because of what they bring to the table. With their performance thumbsticks, you get a better range of motion and better grip on your thumbsticks themselves. Their precision rings offer even more potential aim upgrades, and if you want the ultimate handle on your controller, they've got grips for that too. Like, we're talking the ultimate controller loadout here. If you ever want to grab a pair of Control Freaks or any of the accessories, be sure to throw in code Immortal at checkout for a nice discount. The link for that will be down in the description below if you're interested. Now at number 3, I've got the Holger 556. Really the limiting factor here, and maybe why it's not 1 or 2, is the magazine capacity. You're stuck with a 40 round max here, but other than that, this thing's great. Really reliable TTK, especially in the early mid-range, the longer mid-range, early long range even. That 20 to 45, 50 meter range. Thing is phenomenal, incredibly easy to use, so you're gonna land shots consistently. So it's reliable and it's consistent. It just does struggle a little bit with magazine capacity. Luckily, it doesn't have a crazy fast fire rate, so 40 is not gonna be the end of the world, but you will reload a little bit more often with this than you would maybe in SVA, for instance. I also go for the glassless optic here, working just fine for all ranges. The FTAC angled underbarrel is pretty solid here. It's not gonna hurt your ADS or anything. Adds in some aiming idle sway, some better steadiness. Also gives you better control as well horizontally. That said, of course, Bruin heavy support is going to be a good option too, so you could use either of those and they'll be just fine there. Cryo 6 match barrel, range, velocity, control benefits here. Unfortunately, no idle sway or anything. It actually hurts it a tad bit, but luckily we've gained that back a little bit with the glassless optic. And we got the Spirit fire suppressor, range, velocity, control yet again. So this thing is very reliable and incredibly easy to use, which is a huge benefit as well. Now at number 2, I've got the Ram. This thing, like we saw, is so good in the close range, in the mid range, and even over long range. It's so easy to use and so straightforward that it can be still decently effective there, even though its TTK does drop off a little bit outside of like 45 meters or so. But if you want to go for sniper support, this works great there, or even just as an aggressive rifle, it's going to be a really solid choice. Only reason it's not number 1 is just because over that long range it does drop off some, right? But even with this setup here, which you could use for sniper support, it might be a little bit heavier than something like an AMR9, for instance, but viable for sure. Would work in those situations, but you could also use this out to 50, 60 meters if you were running this for long range. So Spirit fire suppressor, yet again. Also though, Cassis break could be really good, especially if you want to just go for sniper support and make it a tad bit more aggressive there. Core Mark 40 heavy barrel, range, velocity, control, a little bit of idle sway benefits there too. Bruin heavy support, horizontal recoil benefits, firing aim stability, and idle sway benefits as well. 60 round Cinemag, faster fire rate, so this is pretty much necessary there. I love the irons on here. They work good for pretty much all ranges, so I go for the 3.4 pad stock instead. Better gun kick control and better basic recoil control as well for very minimal movement cons there, which is pretty consistent and nice to have. So it's not going to slow you down too much. This is still a pretty aggressive rifle, all things considered, even though this is kind of similar to, I would say, a standard long range build. And then lastly, at number 1, I've got the BP50. As we saw on the graph, beyond 40, 45-ish meters, it's got the best TTK in class. It's also ridiculously easy to use. And then even in the close range, in the mid range, it's right there with the other best options there too. So this thing is just the most consistent throughout. And truly, the only one drawback here is that we're not looking at a 50 or a 60 round mag. It's limited to 45, but even then, it's still pretty sufficient with how quick it's going to be killing. So you're going to be knocking players back to back to back, and you should have time to get these reloads off cleanly unless you're missing shots randomly. But this thing's so easy that it's doing most of the work for you, I would say. So we got the 45 rounder on there, the Moat 40 stock. It's protecting your castle. It's also giving you better control and a little bit better movement there. So that's super convenient. We got the glassless optic. Yet again, no surprises there. The lower 9 heavy barrel range, velocity control, firing aim stability, which is also really nice to see. And then again, Spirit Fire Suppressor, pretty standard there. But overall, rifle meta feeling very competitive right now. You've got some really good choices and some new ones in the mix too, which is nice to see. That is going to wrap things up for this one though. If you enjoyed the video or if you found it helpful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new here, you want to guarantee that every single day you are up to date with news, patch notes, meta breakdowns, all things going on in COD. Be sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.